Illinois lawmakers joined organizations serving people with developmental disabilities at the Illinois State Capitol today. They rallied against eliminating the subminimum wage for people with disabilities. It's known as the Dignity and Pay Act. It would require that people with developmental or intellectual disabilities be paid at least the standard minimum wage. Opponents say it will force organizations that provide services and jobs to people with disabilities to lay them off or even close. Advocates say it will not put people with disabilities out of work.
Without a well-constructed, well-developed plan, the people whom HB 793 is intended to benefit would likely experience unnecessary hardships.
If from our perspective as a statewide group that this bill would put people out of work, especially people with severe and profound intellectual and developmental disabilities, we would not support it. And as a matter of fact, that's sort of been our position on previous versions of this issue, is that the legislation that we've seen would attempt to do that.
Now, currently, the full minimum wage in Illinois is $14 per hour. It's going to increase to $15 per hour next year.